feel like the day you were born was like a lifetime ago. It went by so fast. I need to go, but know that you've been with me every day. Stay strong. Don't be afraid. Everything will be okay. I promise.
Radar detecting large unknown objects.
Know that I did what I could to protect you.
All personnel, man your battle stations.
Enemy ships approaching. Immediate takeoff.
I solemnly swear to devote my life and abilities in defense of the United Nations of Earth, to defend the Constitution of Man, and to further the universal rights of all sentient life. From the depths of the Pacific to the edge of the galaxy,
Readings are off the scale. What is that thing?
for as long as I shall live.
Space Force. From the 1980 Space Force arcade game by Ventureline to modern selections like Alpha Space 2, StarCraft, and Stellaris. One will immediately connect this phrase to high-tech military exercise with cool optical flares, alongside edgy spacecrafts, spy satellites, space stations, and of course, aliens. But what if I tell you this futuristic setting is not that far for us to witness? Well, minus the aliens. I can't guarantee that. Hi, I'm Joey. Welcome back to another episode of Not Just Games. Today, I'm going to talk about the United States Space Force, or USSF. It is a space warfare service branch of the US Armed Forces. Although the Space Force idea has had its share of cameos in the US military since 1982, it was only officially established in December 2019, joining China, Russia, and India in the Space Warfare Nation Brotherhood. Now, before we get excited over outer space tactical face-offs, let's ask ourselves, why Space Force? What exactly does it do? And what are its missions?
I don't think the American public sufficiently understands the importance of space. More people probably listen to Stephen Colbert every night. A lot are wondering, when are we going to have, spacecraft transiting here and there, almost a Star Trek version.
Space Force.
The comedians are having a field day with this. It becomes a laughingstock program, and yet this is deadly serious business.
Firstly, Space Force is for space warfare. Simply put, space warfare involves satellite versus satellite combat, and we call this space-to-space warfare. It can be other military accessories too, provided they are between each other in outer space. Or ground-to-space warfare, where we shoot down satellites from Earth. Or space-to-ground warfare, where satellites attack terrestrial targets. That said, no nations have ever announced to wage a space war yet as of 2020. There are 5 main competencies set for the USSF, first of which is of course, space security, together with combat power projection, space mobility and logistics, information mobility, and lastly, space domain awareness. These are some heavy aims to achieve for some extra cool no signs of life area, don't you think? Here, otherwise, space security is, well, space security. Apart from the obvious guarantee of a worry-free avenue to conduct civil, commercial, and intelligence-related activities for the US and her allies, it also entails trusty information sharing and domain awareness. This would also promote self-protection capabilities. Prompt conflict resolution or support can be provided via rapid information transfer, through the eyes in the skies, and training with non-hostile nations. Combat power projection simply means the Space Force's prowess when facing threats. It can be offensive, where the hostile space and counter-space capabilities will be targeted and neutralized, such as their power grids or spy satellites and other similar key hotspots. The adversary's cyber domain could also be subjugated via this means, making offensive operation one of the essentials in Space Superiority Kit. The third mission for Space Force is space mobility and logistics. It involves the management of military equipment and personnel movement to and from space. For example, they're responsible for replenishing supplies on spacebound spacecrafts or performing spacecraft inspections, hardware maintenance, and technology upgrades. You would need an exceptional reusable spacecraft and launch boosters for this. The next responsibility concerns information mobility. Information is power, but speed is indispensable in our current world. Satellite communication is among the key players to get this done. All the things that satellites can do. That's why the Space Force has their offensive combat power operations, where missiles would likely be the main actors in the act. Space Force also strives to perfect the space domain awareness aspect. To achieve this, the Space Force takes advantage of all available intelligence, environmental monitoring, and data sharing arrangements that would present the fastest uptake on allies, neutrals, and hostiles alike, so that an educated decision could be made and thus ensuring all's well out there in the atmosphere. Up till here, many of you might fancy working at the Space Force division. I certainly do. We have heard of military doctors, military engineers, military lawyers. The same applies here, with the addition of other specializations like cyber and communication, electronics, emergency management and response, missile and space technology, future technologies, and many more. Currently, 16,000 members across the US Army, Navy, and the Air Force are being given the opportunity to join the Space Force. Mind you, only the best of the best will be considered. And after that, as per their usual practice, the chain of commands will be gradually set up and officialized. So, it is safe to say that it will take at least a couple of years, 3 to 4 years even, before an open recruitment is made. If you are really keen to join, like right now, well, you can't. The best bet is to enlist in either the US Army, Navy, or the Air Force, then opt for a Space Force related program that will enable you to transfer and join Space Force later when your rank is high enough. You might increase your odds if you have the specialty skills required by Space Force. For example, if you are a Navy recruit adept at advanced machinery repair or something similar. That said, is there really nothing for a regular civilian? Well, there is, if you're one of these, former military veterans, former federal agents, or a family member of a federal official that has been vetted by the US government. The road to Space Force is not easy, huh? The US Space Force might be the most important military branch in the entire human history. Why? First, let us look past its military persona. We'll see that the shadow queen of its importance is of economic benefits. The 4 drivers of economic growth, namely transportation, manufacturing, information, and energy, are and will be greatly influenced by space, for these economic drivers can be put to work via space-based assets. And these space-based assets are not entirely military. GPS network satellites, weather forecasting satellites, telecommunication satellites, to name a few. These space-based civilian assets, as we call them, function as the lifeblood of modern economies and will mercilessly cripple modern nations of the world if they are ever to become a collateral damage in outer space altercation. In the late 50s, American and Russian engineers feverishly started the anti-satellite weapon endeavor. America emerged as the first nation to conduct an anti-satellite weapon test in 1959. Defunct American satellite was the target, and USA became the leader in space technology, effortlessly coming on top in the quest of military supremacy at the time. Today, other countries have joined the race. China, Russia, and India have also developed their own anti-satellite systems and are industriously pushing for the advancement of their own space technology. in their bid to become the top military leader in space. But why? Remember the economic bit earlier? The ability to reign as the dominant power of a space technology will ensure the control of the 4 economic drivers. You can build the most advanced outer space solar garnering panels, or own that constellation of communication satellites that can relay information faster than any time before. But they all will be for nothing if you could not protect them yourself. And you couldn't protect them if your economy is not strong enough to solicit protection. And this is where Space Force comes into play, to protect your interests, be it military or civilian. There we have it, folks, a brief tour to the Space Force, hopefully enough to rekindle our nerdy dream of space heroics in cool gears and awesome military spacecrafts, while entertaining the idea of how achievable it can be in the not so far future. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I did. Until the next Not Just Games episode, stay safe.
Some people look to the stars and ask, what if? Our job is to have an answer. We have to imagine what will be imagined. Plan for what's possible while it's still impossible. Maybe you weren't put here just to ask the questions. Maybe you were put here to be the answer. Maybe your purpose on this planet isn't on this planet.